Hello there and welcome to our special coverage with me. I'm Abdulrahim Kashour, coming to you live from Algiers on L24 News. More than 100 days into the war, Ukrainian and Russian troops remain mired in heated combat for Severodonetsk, a city that is central to Moscow's goal of capturing the Donbas region, an area of eastern Ukraine that encompasses the regions of Lugansk and Donetsk. President Volodymyr Zelensky this week said that Ukraine's goal is regaining full sovereignty over its territory and that a statement is not an option. Top United Nations officials are leading negotiations on a package deal to ensure that both Ukraine and Russia can export start shipments of grain and fertilizer, which would buoy a global market in a dire need of food as a severe hunger crisis loom. United Nations Secretary Antonio Guterres said on Wednesday. To this end, multiple questions comes to the scene. Would the Battle of Severodonetsk determine the winning side in the Donbas confrontation between Russia and Ukraine? And how is the Ukraine crisis threatening food supply? All of this is going to be analyzed by our panel of guests, Mr. Yuri Golub, journalist and political analyst from Russia, and Ruslan Bortnik, director of the Ukrainian Institute of Politics from Ukraine. Gentlemen, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to this debate. The discussion begins right after this break. And before we delve into our discussion, Russia continues its advancement in the eastern region of Ukraine as part of its military operation in Ukraine. The situation is growing worse for Ukrainian civilians who refuse to leave the city as Ukrainian troops started withdrawing as Russian forces threw all their power to take control of the area through heavy shelling and ground advancement to expand that tight grip.
The city of Severodonetsk in the Luhansk region of Ukraine is still living a severe situation as it's being shelled constantly. The bombardment has taken a terrible toll on the civilians who remain, with many forced into dark basements with severely limited power and disease running rife.
Из-за температуры, потому что он лекарств как-то толком нету. Вот и повыезжало много людей.
А сколько людей уже заболели?
Да лучше послушайте сегодня ночью. Мы все тут болеем.
I must survive. I don't think about those shellings, bombings, explosions, and so on, so forth. I just have to or even must survive.
Ukrainian civilians, mainly farmers in the eastern region of the country, have been planting seasonal vegetables despite the ongoing fierce fighting surrounding them in the country's east. Residents said they had no plans to leave the town in the face of the Russian military advancement. Most of them stated that they had nowhere else to go, so they continue their lives as usual. Some missiles lie in the fields, evidence of the constant threat the city is under. Residents stated aerial strikes come from all around, but there is little they can do.
I won't go away anywhere from here. It's my field. I won't go anywhere. Why should I go somewhere? There is shelling from everywhere daily. What can we do? We need to live somehow and to survive somehow.
Injured Ukrainian soldiers and civilians were being brought to clinics in a key eastern Ukrainian city of Lysychansk on Wednesday, as fighting continues there. The urban battle for Severodonetsk testified the painstaking, inch-by-inch advance by Russian forces as they close in on control of the entire Luhansk region, one of the two regions that make up the industrial heartland known as the Donbas. Russian forces announced also that several units of the Ukrainian forces are withdrawing from the eastern Ukrainian region as the shelling and advancement continues in the region that is heading to taking full control of it as it threw all its force on it.
Coming with you, Mr. Yuri, do you think that Russian troops could have succeeded to reach the main goal behind this military operation if the Western nations didn't involve? And what are you saying about the new rocket system sent by US and UK? Isn't a risky move that the West is taking?
The Russian forces must be succeeded, and they must
reach their goal, because the question now is the question of the life and death. We must understand that the modern Kiev regime is the real danger for the Russian national safety. It was growing for years by the Washington, and it was growing to destabilize the situation nearby to the Russian borders. And the stage that broke the camel's back was the plans of Zelensky to get the nuclear weapon. So there are no variants. Russian forces must be succeeded. And the Americans and British rockets is also the real danger. And I'm sure that the American government don't believe to Zelensky when he said that Ukrainian will not attack the Russian territory. I think that the chance of these attacks is really high, and this is a danger for all the world. It's a global danger because Russia will answer, and Russia can answer not only Ukraine but also the USA and the UK. It's really a risky move. It's really
I'm sorry to cut your train of thought, Mr. Yuri.
Politics.
Mr. Yuri, I'm sorry to cut your train of thought, but after the new assaults on Ukraine's capital this week, it shows that Russia, economically as well as militarily, could maintain its pressure over the Ukrainian lands for a long period. And at the same time, these strikes were a warning to US last delivery. Will they pay attention for their next move, or they will insist even more to make the situation worse? Like UK, now they are still delivering these new system weapons.
Of course, that Russia will consider these economical this economical conflict also.
Quite understood. Now, moving on to the second point, Russia says it's ready to guarantee the safety of grain ships leaving Ukrainian ports with the cooperation of the Turkey. According to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who was on a state visit to Turkey, at a press conference in Ankara, and with his Turkish counterpart Mevlut Cavusoglu, Lavrov said that talks aimed at securing the passage of Ukrainian grains exports.
We have explained that grain can be exported freely to its destinations. There are no obstacles from Russia. Only one thing is needed, that is Mr. Zelensky's order, if he can still decide anything, to allow foreign and even Ukrainian ships to enter the Black Sea.
Mr. Yuri, do you think Turkey, or Turkey, as President Erdogan highlighted recently, do you think he can play a major role to ease the situation between Ukraine and Russia? Taking into consideration he was the only one who could manage to bring the top officials from both sides to the table of negotiation in the sixth round of negotiations, as I recall.
I think that Turkey and the President Erdogan would like to play this role, and I think that he really can be the mediator between Ukraine and Russia. But unfortunately, I don't believe in the peace process at this stage. Firstly, because the Kiev regime is not really independent, and Zelensky is the puppet of Washington. And I think that American government now doesn't believe in the Ukrainian victory, but it is still interested in the chaos in this territory. And secondly, the Kiev regime is not suitable for Russia now, because maybe after these negotiations, the border can be moved, but this regime still can be danger.
Quite understood. Coming to you, Mr. Ruslan, thank you so much for joining us. As a Ukrainian, how can you read the diplomacy efforts made so far after this war, the so-called military operation that started? Don't you think that diplomacy has failed before the 24th of February and is still failing to reach the ultimate goal, no war?
Hello, colleagues. Yes, you're absolutely right. I think the diplomacy is not successful in this war. Moreover, and I'm worrying a lot about it, that people who leads us to this conflict from the different sides, diplomatic from the different sides, are continuing to work on it. I think we should talk and should think over about the change in people who felt this diplomacy before this war. And moreover, if to be honest with our audience, starting from the March, we have no negotiation between Russia and Ukraine at all, because there is no political negotiation between the sides of this war. There is only technical contacts where the sides of this war are trying to resolve the problem, how to change the bodies of killed person, how to change captured person, how to resolve the problem with the unblocking of Ukrainian seaports, and so on. But there is no any political dialogue about peace, dialogue about peace agreement between the Ukrainian and Russia. And there is no also European Union and United States around this table, because this main player, global player, also China, are out of the table. It looks like they are waiting for the resolution of this conflict, final of this conflict, and they're looking their own benefit in this situation.
Perfectly understood. Mr. Yuri, coming back to you, Russia's main target behind this military operation was to stop the NATO expansion eastward Europe. But now Sweden and Finland has applied to join this alliance. Could we say that Russia has failed to reach the ultimate goal, which is preventing NATO to be enlarged precisely near the Russian borders?
Yes, I think that the danger is stronger now because the entering of Finland and Sweden to the NATO can become to the great problems in the future. For example, it's the problem of Kaliningrad and the status of the Baltic Sea as a neutral sea, because we know that the part of Russian will be...
Quite understood. Mr. Ruslan, coming back to you, what is your comment over the application of Finland and Sweden to join NATO? Don't you think that they will face the same fate as Ukraine? I mean, they will face another military operation from Russia.
I think, of course, it's a natural right of this country to become the part of any unity around the world. But in this situation, I think they do it because of scary of Russian intervention against these countries. And they use a moment when the Russia is concentrated on Ukraine. But at the same time, tomorrow in the European media was a lot of articles about that NATO is impossible. It could suit the nuclear weapon in this area. And moreover, from the Russian side, there is the draft law in the Parliament of Russia, which propose to block the recognition of the independence of Litva. And so it, in general, situation is hurting in Baltic Sea, in North region, and this region should be one more front line between the Russia and the NATO countries.
Quite understood. Now, moving on to another point to be discussed, as the cost of food soars around the world. The United Nations warns that the war in Ukraine risks aggravating expanding prices and causing a fall on the global food crisis. Lebanon imports 90% of its grain from Ukraine and Russia. However, after the port blast in 2020 that destroyed its primary grain storage, the country only has about 1 month of reserves available. On the other hand, Pakistan suffered from a poor wheat harvest and its government sought Ukraine and grain from abroad. Ukraine covered about 60% of overall import potential. African countries, on the other hand, also imported 44% of their wheat from Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine alone grew enough food for 400 million people, and this crisis makes the African countries living the hardest food crisis ever. Coming back to you, reports said that the world was already witnessing the food crisis in several countries, especially the African ones, due to the severe drought and economic crisis. So why would Ukraine and the West pointing finger to Russia as the main reason for this food crisis and grain shortages?
We know that the equatorial nearby to the Ukrainian ports is mined, and it's mined by the Ukrainians. And the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov said that Russia will not block the Ukrainian grain export. And we must understand that the problems with the Ukrainian grain export is not only a reason of the food crisis. For example, one of the reasons is the increasing prices increasing of gas prices. Because as we know, gas is the material for producing of the mineral fertilizers. So the real reason of the food crisis is the trade war against Russia, and this war began before 24th of February.
Quite understood. Luca Russo, who works as an analyst for food crisis within the Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations, he said, Mr. Ruslan, we need to clarify that today there is no global food storage shortages. Food is available. To give you a number, each year the world produces about 780 million metric tons of wheat, and the shortage for this year is only 3 million. So, Mr. Ruslan, how is the Ukraine crisis threatening food supply?
Well, it's a great question. We are talking not just about the wheat or just about the food. We are talking about the political stability in the world. Why Ukrainian food is so important for the world? Because it's cheap. And Ukrainian food helped in many countries in Asia, in Africa, to make a cheap food, to have ability to feed the population in that countries. And if there is no dangers that without Ukrainian food there will be hungry, or global hunger, but there is dangers of rising the prices for this food and rises of prices for this food in African or Asian countries will lead to the political destabilization, will lead to the changing of regimes in many countries, should lead to the changes the regimes in many countries, and should lead to destabilization in world economy, because many African countries and Asian countries are extremely important for United States, for Europe Union, as a countries who support resources, very important resources for Western economies, for China economies. So we are talking not about food, we are talking about political stability in the world, about the world economy in general. And there is a big danger for such type of food destabilization during this year, because the problem of unblocking of Ukrainian seaport is not resolved still.
Quite important points you have raised. It's really quite indeed. Now, moving on to another point, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel defended her policy towards Russia on Tuesday, saying that she did not have to apologize for having relied on diplomacy and trade to try to avoid a war in Ukraine. Speaking for the first time in public since stepping down from the political life 6 months ago, the former leader once again harshly condemned the Russian adventure in Ukraine, which she said has no justification.
I don't see why I should tell myself it was a mistake, so I'm not going to apologize. What I wondered is, could more have been done to prevent such a tragedy? Because I already see the situation as a great tragedy. Could it have been avoided? In retrospect, I'm actually glad I don't have to blame myself for not trying to prevent an event like this. On the contrary, I've luckily tried enough with successive French presidents, and that gives me a form of appeasement.
Mr. Yuri, after this statement by the ex-German Chancellor Angela Merkel, don't you think that the new world leaders such as Biden in USA, Scholz in Germany, and NATO new policies played a vital role to escalate the tension between Ukraine and Russia, which is now a direct confrontation?
Yes, of course, the Ukrainian, the German foreign policy can't be completely independent. But the ex-Chancellor Angela Merkel is a strong politician, and she was a respectable person, and she had the great experience of attitudes with Russia. And we see that the modern German government, the traffic light coalition, is really more weak. There are for example, Scholz and Baerbock are opponents in many questions. For example, we remember the question of the Nord Stream, and they are still opponents. And of course, this modern German government is more open to the American pressure. And this weakness played an important role in this tragedy.
Perfectly understood. So you are saying that the new world leaders are kind of responsible for the escalation between Ukraine and Russia?
Yes, surely.
Perfect. Now, Mr. Ruslan, what are you saying about this? I mean, in other words, what is your interpretation for the recent events and statements of the ex-German Chancellor?
We are talking not only about Angela Merkel, we are talking about the very big part of German and French political elites who were worked on Ukrainian topic last 8 years between 2014, starting the war in Donbass, till this new big war. And it looks like many people, many politicians inside of Europe are looking the person to guilt, to blame them for the starting this war. And Angela Merkel is one of these goals in this new canceling culture, political canceling culture in Europe, maybe. Moreover, Angela Merkel is one of the leaders in opposition German party nowadays. This opposition German party, opposition to the Scholz, nowadays Chancellor, is also trying to criticize the new days policy of Scholz, and it looks like a game and a struggle, political struggle inside of Europe. But in any case, I very high evaluate the work of Merkel and her role in European Union. In any case, this war happened after the Merkel, not in her time.
Quite understood. Now, staying in Germany, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz defended his arms delivery policy to Ukraine, insisting that his country is one of the main supporters of Ukraine and no one delivers as much as they do, in his visit to Lithuania. Let's hear it.
Germany is one of Ukraine's main supporters. No one delivers as much as we do. There are a few that are also doing a lot, such as the United States. But Germany is one of the countries that are committing its capabilities on a very large scale. We have supplied large quantities of anti-tank weapons, anti-crab missiles, ammunition in huge quantities.
Staying with you, Mr. Ruslan, don't you think that US, UK, Germany and Ukraine allies are really late to aid Ukraine now with strong, effective weapons? Why they didn't do that a month ago, 2 months ago? Were they afraid of the Russian response that we have seen this week with the new strikes over the capital Kiev, or that was the beginning, or that was the aim from the very beginning to prolong the war, as Vladimir Putin claimed?
It happened because of real truth, United States goal in this war. The main United States goal in this war, and I am talking a lot with my American partners and colleagues, is to exhaust Russia, but don't block Russia. It's one topic, and another topic to omit any possibility to the straight conflict between the countries of NATO and Russia because of nuclear thing and because of this conflict, this straight conflict between United States and Russia or NATO countries and Russia will give Putin much more power even he has now. And so due to this strategy, we should compare how many weapons Western countries gave for Ukraine again and gave for Afghanistan in previous time. And this comparison is not on Ukrainian side, because Western partners still now are not ready to give for Ukraine aircrafts, tactical rocket systems, and another modern weapon. They give only that weapon, old weapon, almost all, which are helping Ukraine to defend, but not to win.
Not to attack, only to defend. Coming to you, Mr. Yuri, words to put an end for the show because 1 minute left. After this military operation comes to an end, and this is inevitable, it will end, do you think that Russia will be accepted in the European society again? And will the Russian oligarchs regain their power, such as Roman Abramovich, who was forced to sell his football club, FC Chelsea?
I think that Russia never was really accepted in the European society, and the Europe attitude to Russia Europe was interested in Russia only for the economical drain. But I think that after these conflicts, the economical, political, and also cultural contacts will continue in the inequality. But I think that the last what happens is a good lesson for the Russian business.
Mm-hmm. Quite understood. Mr. Ruslan, a word to put an end?
And repeat, please. I've lost a part of our discussion.
I said a word to put an end for the discussion. The conclusion is for you.
And as I understand, Russia is going to continue their slow attack on Ukraine, and they are not going to stop for any negotiation for any moment.
Perfectly understood. Mr. Ruslan from Ukraine, Mr. Yuri from Russia, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to this show. And dear viewers, thank you so much for keeping it here in Al 24 News with us. Bye for now.